Hello, welcome to part 2. Let's talk about pathos. So, we just unpacked ethos and how important competence, good moral character, and goodwill are to communicate in your delivery. The next thing that makes really great delivery is pathos. Okay? So, in addition to argument and reasoning, okay, which is going to be logos, your evidence, okay, is going to be linked with your ethos. You must have emotion. You got to have some way that you rouse passion and feelings in your audience. Okay, now this doesn't mean, by the way, that your audience has to be in tears. Okay, that dynamism we talked about that goes with competence. Dynamism is going to carry pathos. That energy, that charisma of you being you, just turned up maybe to 11 a little bit, is going to carry pathos. Another thing that's going to carry pathos is power. If you remember from, I think it's the Science of Not Boring People reading that we did a couple weeks back. Sorry, I said weeks back like it's one word. A couple weeks back, he talks about how power solves most attention problems. That's because that power, that confidence carries good pathos or pathos. Okay, I like pathos. Okay, that's how I say it. So let's talk about emotion. All right, you've got three broad sources, generally speaking, when it comes to emotion. Now, the science behind emotion is broad and as deep as the ocean. There is so much that we could talk about. We're going to talk about it generally. Okay, so. And this is all linked to Aristotle, by the way, and the way Aristotle talked about it. So, pleasure, displeasure, arousal, non-arousal, and we're not just talking about sexual arousal or non-arousal, okay? So, we're talking about a state of physical arousal. So, like if I heard, like last night, I was in my house and someone was setting off fireworks, even though it is not 4th of July, and it was loud and it was late at night and it was this really loud boom. I entered a state of arousal, like, oh my gosh, what was that? Okay, so we're not talking about sexual arousal there, all right? And then power or powerlessness, all right? And we're going to unpack these so that you can understand how to apply this in your speaking, okay? Now remember, if you've got confidence, if you've got power, if you've got that dynamism, you are going to communicate power to your audience, and that is going to be in the dimension of pleasure for them, okay? People like that in a speaker, all right? If you stand up in front of an audience and you're kind of like, well, you know, I guess, I'm not really sure, blah, 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 you seem powerless, that is going to be in the realm of displeasure, and you're not going to have pathos, okay? So there you go. That's how this stuff works. So, and I just said, instead of saying pathos, after saying I like to say pathos, I said pathos. Maybe I'm just going to go back and forth. We'll just go back and forth and say it both ways. How about that, okay? So, theory suggests that if an audience member is aroused, and we're not talking about sexual arousal, caused to feel pleasure, okay, and we're not talking about just physical pleasure, all right, and caused to feel powerful, then they're open or more open to your conclusions, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make sure you've got that good, strong, powerful, competent delivery. You want to make sure your audience can trust you and senses that you have their good will in mind, right? And you want to make sure that you are carrying them with your delivery into pathos, okay? So you're going to have it inherently. But then if you actually sit there and go, okay, you know, what could I do to make this interesting? This is why we talk about attention. Attention is, if you can pay attention to your audience's attention and how you're carrying that with you, you are going to have good pathos, okay? So let's talk about some tips for it, all right? So how do I practically do this, all right? Number one, use concrete examples so that your listeners can visualize what you're describing, okay? You want to show, not tell. This is one of the rules for good writing. It's a rule for good speaking. Now, You have the advantage of you could actually show. You could actually put a picture up. You could actually show a short video. You have those options, okay? Use concrete examples. Don't use vague language, okay? Don't say a lot of people struggle with this. No, use a number, cite a statistic, tell me, you know, or it's even better. So instead of me saying, a lot of Americans feel like they are overweight and unattractive. I don't know, I'm just saying this, okay? It is more concrete for me to say the majority of American citizens surveyed, now I would look this up, I'm making this up, but okay, the majority, 60% of Americans surveyed feel this way. That's a concrete example, okay? Don't say don't say going to the store is bad. Say, going to stores like store X, store Y, store Z, who have no standards for how the animals and the products that they are selling are treated is bad, okay? So use concrete examples, all right? So that your audience can understand it. Use emotion arousing words. Don't say things like, it's really bad right now. Say, it is terrible. It is horrifying. Okay? If it's on the good end, don't just say, it's really good right now. Say, it's exciting. Okay? Use words that are more powerful. This is why language is so important. That's why we're reading that chapter, is because using good words and using them on purpose will carry pathos for your audience. Okay? So use emotion arousing words. Now, I'm not talking about, falsely stoking emotion just to get people all riled up over something. And by the way, don't use bad language. And I know bad language is vague, so I'm going to clarify that. You don't want to use words that you know are going to upset your audience. Don't use offensive language. Don't use curse words if it's not in the right place. Or if there might be an okay amount of cussing, that's okay. Use that. But don't go overboard. Use what's expected, okay? So use those emotion-arousing words so that your audience can understand what's going on, okay? And then feel it. Use nonverbal behavior to communicate an emotional response. If you're at a very important part of your speech, it might be time to slow down. It might be time to emphasize your words, okay? I went a little weird there at the end because I'm trying to emphasize it, but slow down. Maybe you've been talking and it's a big part of your speech and it's time to slow down and get a little bit softer. If it's something that's sad, if it's something that's serious, if it's something that you really need your audience to lean in for, use your nonverbal behavior to do that. And by the way, if you want your audience to lean in, you should too a little bit, okay? You standing up there, you can slow down, you can start to speak a little bit softer, and you can lean in towards your audience just a little bit, and they're going to sense that's what you want them to do. That's good nonverbal cue for their pathos, okay? So look at the speech that you were preparing for your persuasive presentation and ask yourself, so far now, there are 6 tips, but I'm going to stop right here for now just to kind of unpack it, and then I'm going to do the last 3, okay? So are you using concrete examples? Look through your speech and see, hey, is this something that my audience will be able to visualize? Could I put a picture up for them to see, okay? Am I using concrete examples? Am I using emotion-arousing words in my descriptions? Am I painting a picture for my audience? Am I doing this in a way that actually communicates the severity or the real feeling, if it's a good thing that you're persuading about, okay? And then how can I use my nonverbal behavior to communicate for that emotional response? How do I plan to deliver this point right here that says, if we don't do something about climate change, we're all going to be in serious trouble? Like, what can I do nonverbally right there? Should I start to speak a little bit quicker and get a little bit more intense in my tone? Or should I just get serious with my audience and lay it all out there and be very frank and open? And using a slower pace, using a lower volume might really be impactful right there. Ask these questions. This is what the good speakers do, okay? Let's look at the last three here. Number 4, use visual images to evoke emotions. Okay, so what you want to do is think about, okay, is there something I can do to go along with this? Now, one of the things that I find my students end up doing is they try to over-rely on the visual image for their pathos, and that's not going to work, okay? If you've got great pictures and horrible delivery, it doesn't work. If you've got great pictures and you're still using non-emotion arousing words and your nonverbal behavior communicates that this is not that big of a deal, then the visual image is going to lose its power. It is a visual aid. Remember, we talked about this. It's a visual aid. It needs to aid and enhance what you're doing. So think about that. Number 4, use appropriate fear appeals. Fear appeals for things that should not cause fear are not okay. But some things ought to cause fear. We talked about this with the persuasive strategies. Some things ought to cause fear. So use an appropriate fear appeal. If there's something you're talking about and fear is the appropriate response to it, then use the fear appeal. Okay? Paint that picture. Use negative motivation as your persuasive strategy. It's a really good idea to do that. And then number 6, ask yourself, how can I maybe use different appeals to multiple emotions? Okay? Don't just go for one or the other. Don't just go for sad. Some of the most effective persuasive presentations I've ever seen have absolutely used a fear appeal and genuinely stirred it up in me, and then their solutions give me hope. Oh my gosh, that is so effective. Okay, think about that. I get really sad hearing about this one thing, but then it turns out the solution you're advocating for gives me happiness or gives me joy or gives me hope, right? So consider simultaneous appeals to several emotions. Another thing that carries really great pathos is humor. If you can be a little bit funny mixed in with a little bit sad, that is good pathos. Your audience feels the highs of the funny and then the downs of the this is very serious. Okay? So now I'm not talking about, a knock-knock joke in the middle of a speech unless it really works. I've actually, one of the best speeches I ever had a knock-knock joke as the attention getter, and it worked really well. So consider simultaneous appeals to several emotions so that your audience experiences highs and lows. Your audience experiences the lean in of something serious and the laid back of something fun. Whatever it is that you're speaking about, consider how you can do this, because you can. You can. Any speaker can do this. You do not have to have this. We talk about these people. Oh, they're just a natural speaker. Well, chances are you are too. Okay, the people who you see who are really great at it, they think about these things. They practice these things. I'm talking about the really great ones. That amazing TED Talk that you love, they worked on this stuff. Okay, and they probably did it with a consultant. Okay, they don't do it by themselves. So think about these things. Think about how you can do this, and then apply it to your persuasive presentation. Okay, so folks, that's it for our delivery screencasts for the week. Take a look at the chapters, dive into the discussions for this week, where we're talking about delivery, and then where we're working on our polished versions of our persuasive drafts, and we do our speeches this week. So I'll see you in the boards. Have a good week.